Hello and welcome to a rather late edition of Hughes the World. And today I'm in Liverpool. Well, I'm going to be talking about Canada. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for holding on there. I'm sorry I'm 20 minutes late getting this started. A few technical problems, but also there was a lot to go through. There's a lot to get ready for the show. So I hope you appreciate it. We're going to be talking to a real life Canadian, I hope. And we're also going to be going through some of my footage from Canada that has never been seen before, except by me when I filmed it. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so just first of all, I'd like to say hello to everybody watching there at home. We've got on the playlist here, we got, my God, there's lots of people. We've got Jeremy Goff, we've got Lee Corn, we've got Charlie, we've got Lee again, we've got Daly Blase, we've got Duke Vengeance, we've got Bayerberg. We have got Richard Prosser, we've got Sci-Fi Pulse, we've got Chubai, we've got Pineapple Boy, we've got Peter that's B, alright Pete. We've got, bloody hell, we've got everybody here. Gaz Riley's here, another Scouser, alright mate. We've got Cricket Everett over in America, in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got David over in Andalusia. Hello mate, how you doing? We've got Pekla Tori in Finland, I think. And Ice Hockey, Burrs, Dan Aykroyd, Graham is late, Mike Myers. Yes, let's try this. I wonder what a Scouser sounds like when trying to butcher a Canadian accent. Well, if we can talk to Janet later, she is a Scouser who's lived in Canada for 40 years. So you'll have to make your own judgments on how wacky her accent is. So Canada, well, I mean, it doesn't need any introduction, does it? It's not like when I'm doing an episode in a few weeks on Comoros, where it's like everyone's going, where the hell is that? Canada, obviously, second biggest country in the world, very famous for its maple leaves. Its population is around 40 million people. There are 2,800 hockey rinks in Canada. That's unbelievable. It's got one of the largest uranium mine in the world is in Canada. The third biggest reserves of oil in the world after Venezuela and Saudi Arabia is in Canada. Canada's it's mammoose. It's massive. Second biggest country in the world. Longest coastline of any country in the world. Often when you get these questions in pub quizzes, Canada's the answer, because it is pretty big. It's pretty big, but a lot of it is uninhabitable. A bit like Australia. So I kind of think of it like a kind of cold Australia. I don't know if that's a bit harsh on either Australia or Canada, but yeah, you know, they've got the same kind of vibe going on in many ways. Something we'll get into a bit later on. The flag is the amazing maple leaf design, which is one of my flags that I really like. I really like this flag. It is simple. It's two-tone. It's not full of stupid colours. Nothing clashes. No one's thought that putting yellow and blue together might be a good idea. It's not a tricolour. If you see that symbol, you think Canada. If you see a tricolour, especially if it's like a blue, yellow, and red tricolour, you're gonna have to look up that, aren't you? Because is that Chad? Is it Andorra? Is it Moldova? Is it who knows? But you know that's good. Anyway, the maple leaf is symbolic of the maple leaf. So that's good. And apparently, I only learnt this today, but the red sides are for the blood spilt for the country in World Wars 1 and 2. So there you go. Or the bravery. I think it's the bravery. It's not always the blood. It's usually the blood. If you see red on a flag, it's usually blood. The best one for that was when we were talking about Austria. Do you remember the reason why their flag is just red and a white band and then red again is because that was the tunic of the king or whoever who went into battle and basically had a white tunic on, got it completely covered in blood, took his belt off and went, look, I made a flag. So, yeah, could happen. Anyway, the GDP per capita of Canada is $46,000. Actually, it's $46,194.73. And that outstrips the UK. The UK is only on $42,000 per person. Oh my God. I don't know what I'll do with that kind of money. But if you'd help me get to my dream of earning anything near the GDP per capita of the United Kingdom or any other country, to be honest with you, I mean, I'd be happy with Chad at the moment. Please, the super chats are open. You may throw some money in and it might make me more on time in future. I don't know. I'm not promising anything. So, about 1.4 million Canadians refer to themselves as belonging to the Indigenous or Aboriginal people, amongst them the First Nation people, the Métis, I will say that a bit like later, and Inuits. And the 21st of June is celebrated as the National Aboriginal Day in Canada. Food. Let's talk about food. Maples. Maple syrup, obviously, massive over there. Tim Hortons is a big donut and coffee firm. Poutine is, it's awesome. It's chips with cheese on it and tomato, something. I can't remember. It's really good anyway. Really, really unhealthy. And mousse. When I was in Canada back in 2009, in the March of 2009, I sampled some mousse. I had a little bit of mousse. You only not like dessert mousse, but actual the animal mousse. Apparently, you're not allowed to shoot one a year, and there's a ban on farming them, hunting them any more than that. And it was all right, a bit gamey. Actually, might have some footage of that to show you later. Don't worry, we don't shoot any animals. It's been bought and cooked and everything. Right, I'll just read out some of the messages I've got here. Hi, Graham from Kensington, from the UN Special Envoy. Just up the road from West Derby, where I am. Hello. We've got Austin Powers is Canadian, he is, and his mum, and his grandparents are from Liverpool. They're from Old Swan. Do you know whose mum is also from Old Swan? Halle Berry. True story. Old Swan, just up the road, on the way to Kensington. Is Kanzuk gaining much traction in Canada? Nope. Not really. I don't think they care that much. Yes, thank you, Cricket. She gives me $10 on the super chat, saying $10 is closer to your per capita income. Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Cricket, for giving that. Makes it all worthwhile. The maple leaf on the flag of Canada is that of the sugar maple. Oh my God, you're teaching me so much. Gwyneth is saying, hope I haven't missed much. You've missed nothing, Gwyneth, because I've literally only just started the show. I'm very sorry. I was very late getting going. Pete Crosby says, I had a pint with Mike Myers in town. Liverpool, that is. Nice guy. Short and a red, but sound. If I talk to Janet in a bit, she's a red. She's a cop-out. Yeah, I'm sure that will come up. David Cronenberg says, Charlie Nelson. Yes, David Cronenberg is Canadian, the film director. Completely lunatic. And so is Kids in the Hall. Kids in the Hall? Do you remember the comedy show, Kids in the Hall? That was bloody brilliant. The Montreal Comedy Festival, just for laughs, also brilliant. Come on. You know the Kids in the Hall. I'm squishing your face. I still do this to the kids. I go, I'm squishing your face. And they do it back to me. They have no idea what it's from. It's from the 90s. Surrealist alternative comedy show called Kids in the Hall, which I really, really recommend. From Canada, it's a good show. So let's just dive in a little bit here into the music though, because I made a slightly off-color joke earlier when I said Canada has the most dangerous roads in the world. Someone asked me why I say Canada's got the most dangerous roads in the world. Is it because of the ice roads? And no, they've only got one road, and all the musicians are in the middle of it. Now, when it comes to music in Canada, it really is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, you've got Arcade Fire, who are one of my favourite bands in the world. Their 2004 album, Funeral, is absolutely phenomenal. And if you buy the British edition, the date of the funeral is actually my birthday. Thanks for that. But nice little Easter egg there. Stars, who sung Your Ex-Lover is Dead, which starts with a little audio sample saying, when there's nothing else to burn, you have to set yourself on fire. Which is just a great way to start a song. New Pornographers, who are fantastic. Their Challengers album is one of my favourites. Leonard Cohen, who is not just one of my favourite artists of all time, one of my dad's favourite artists of all time. And I got a chance to see him live, play live in Glastonbury in, I think, 2008, and my dad saw him at the Liverpool Philharmonic a couple of years after that. And what a guy. When I saw him at Glastonbury, I was with a few mates of mine who didn't really know much about Leonard Cohen, and every time he started singing these songs, they go, I know this one. And I'm like, yeah, because they've all been covered. Like, Hallelujah's been covered like a million times by different people, but it was originally Leonard Cohen. Fantastic poet, and Dance Me to the End of Time is my dad's favourite song of all time. So there you go. And Neil Young. Really, really great music coming out of Canada. I'm coming to it. Sci-Fi Pulse, £5 super chat. Canada, particularly Vancouver and Toronto, are known as Hollywood North because many US TV productions are moving there for tax reasons back in the 80s. Yes, Famously, The X-Files was filmed in Vancouver. Okay, back to the music. The Bad. Alanis Morissette. Nothing in that song was ironic, Alanis. It was just misfortunate. William Shatner. Okay, look. The Shat, he's got a lot. He was Captain Kirk. You can't hate him. However, his cover version of Rocket Man is at once the most cringeworthy and hilarious cover versions of all time. You've got to check it out. After this, type in William Shatner, Rocket Man. It's freaking hilarious. Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams haunted my nightmares throughout, 1993? When that fucking, what's it called? The Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves came out. You know, the one with the American playing Robin Hood, where they landed in Britain, down in Dover, and then they made their way to Sherwood Forest via the Hadrian's Wall, because that's how geography works. Yeah, pretty bad. Anyway, that song, Anything I Do, I'll Do It For You, that is a crime against humanity. It's not just a crime against music, it's a crime against humanity. And it was played over and over again. They do that to torture people in Guantanamo Bay. They play the same song over and over and over again for weeks on end. Who was buying it? After the 8th week, who wanted a copy of that fucking song hadn't already got a copy? I'm sorry. It's not Canada's fault, I know. Ryan Reynolds is from Canada. He seems like a top bloke. But Bryan Adams, Michael Bublé, music for people who don't like music. And then there's the downright ugly. Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On. When the music revolution comes and we wheel out the guillotine, we will see if her heart goes on. I doubt it will. Sorry, Celine. Another song that just over freaking played to ad nauseum. And now when you just hear the beginning of it, you go out your mind. The added poignancy for me with that song was when we were driving on the wrong side of the Nigerian highway between Lagos and Calabar, going through like Port Harcourt, Biafra, the rebel places. Luckily, that week there had been like a gun amnesty or something, so it was unlikely I was going to get kidnapped. But we were driving on the wrong side of this freeway at like 90 miles an hour to avoid the burning tank. It was like Mad Max. The burning tanker on our side of the motorway. We'd sort of cut across in a bit of the barrier that had been already broken open by another crash, assumedly. Is that a word? Anyway, so I'm driving along and I'm absolutely freaking out. I'm screaming to the driver, please get on the right side of the road. Please slow down as we're going towards oncoming traffic on a motorway. And what's playing on the stereo? Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On. Not Canada's fault. Not even Nigeria's fault. No one's fault, really. Just happened to be the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong tune. If I died to the sound of Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On, I would come back as a vengeful spirit and basically upset people all around the world like a poltergeist. I'll just open things and throw books off shelves and generally freak them out for all eternity as vengeance, a vengeful spirit. Anyway, and finally, penultimately, we started thinking, Canada, it's not that bad. Gave us Arcade Fire, gave us New Pornographers, then they gave us Justin Bieber. Thanks for that, Canada. But Justin Bieber, on the greater scheme of things, does it matter? Does it really matter? It's music for kids. It's like getting upset about little Jimmy Osmond's. Who cares? Now let's talk Nickelback. Oh my God. If you paid a nickel to see that band, do you know what you should do? You should ask for your... Yeah. See what I'm saying? Pineapple Boy, £2. Enough with the culture. Talk about the country. Okay, all right. Let's dive in, shall we? Should we have a look at the quick? Have a quick look at the map, and then we'll head into the history of the place as I'm being shimmied along tonight. Obviously, we do have a lot of stuff to go through. So that apparently, it looks familiar. That little sort of blue marble there. That's planet Earth, apparently, or so I'm told. You never know. People think it's flat. Anyway, and there's Europe there, and there's Africa, and there's South America, and there's North America, and you'll see that like half of North America is taken up by Canada, and there it is. There's the Hudson Bay there, which is the second biggest bay in the world, after the Bay of Bengal. Quiz people will be happy to know that. And you can just about make out the different areas of Canada. You got the provinces down here. You got British Columbia. You got Alberta. You got Saskatchewan. You got Manitoba. You got Ontario. You got Quebec. You got Newfoundland and Labrador, which are two bits that were put together. And you got Nova Scotia over here. You've also got New Brunswick, which is just NB on the map. I can't actually see it. The map's got off the edge, but that NB there is New Brunswick. Not to be confused with New Hampshire, that's in America. Over here, we've got the Yukon area. We've got where they found gold in the 1920s, I think. Here we've got the Northwest Territory. And over here, we have Nunavut. Nunavut is the newest territory. It was only made into a territory in 1999. That's home to about 28,000 Inuit people who live there. And then you've got all these little islands up here, which are kind of crazy. And what else do you need to know? Okay, so this this line here, which doesn't quite add up, does it? This is supposed to be the 49th parallel, and this was agreed by the British and the Americans in the wake of the War of 1812, and they decided to cut the line along there. But there's a few bits of weirdness. The most particular bit of weirdness is around this lake here, where the line just goes up for no reason and encompasses this bit of America. Also, you've got a lot of towns along the border which are literally split in two. There's one town around here where there's a library. You go in one door of the library if you're in America, and the other door if you're in Canada, and you're not allowed to go out the other door unless you've got a visa. Unless you got your passport, I guess. You've got to go to customs and whatever. So you look through Lake Superior, the biggest lake in North America. That's split. That looks slightly more in America's favour over there. And then you've got Toronto over here, which is famous for the Toronto Tower. And very close to Toronto is where you will find, is Detroit down here, by the way. And over here is where you have Niagara Falls. So half of Niagara Falls is technically in Canada, and the other half is in America. Over here we have Montreal, the capital of Quebec, and that's very much the is it the capital? Someone's going to correct me now and say, no, actually, Graham, it's not that. Ottawa is the capital of the entire country, and you've also got Quebec City up there. Montreal's a fabulous place, really great architecture, and like I say, fantastic comedy festival that they have there. They also have a jazz festival. Nova Scotia over here, which is really fun, which is the main town here is Halifax there, and that was famous for a massive, big fuck-off explosion that happened in the 1910s, I think, and wiped out most of the town. It was insane. There was a boat full of nitrates. You know what happened in, that place? Sorry, why am I centering on the US? Go away, US. You don't count. That explosion that happened a year and a day ago in... go away. I don't want information. In Lebanon. It was very much like that. So there you go. There's Canada. It is freaking huge. It goes huge, not Hughes. It goes all the way up into the north here. If anyone else is saying anything interesting, Charlie Nelson, have you seen the 49th parallel film from World War II? Yes, indeed, Charlie, I have. It's a Powell and Pressburger movie, I think, and it was a propaganda effort made during the war to get America into the war, and it features the exploits of some Nazis who land in Canada, and when the big-hearted Canadian folk try and help them out, these Nazis respond by murdering them brutally in front of their children. Until they try and get into America, where they will be free because America wasn't in the war at that point. So it was a propaganda tool. It's a good movie, 49th Parallel, well worth checking out. Many Polish exiles moved to Canada after World War II. That's very true. There's a street where one side's the US and the other side's Canada. You get in trouble if you cross the road. Woohoo! Graham is buffering. Oh, that's bad news, Pineapple Boy. That is really bad news. I'm not happy about that because I am actually plugged into the internet and literally everybody else in the house is asleep. Everybody else in the house right now is asleep. So I'm sorry about the buffering. I have a mate that lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia. They've got a great fort there and a great little music scene as well. Talking about music again. They have a thing set up where you go to people's houses each week. They have an open house and people go into someone's living room and you watch a band play. It's fantastic. It's great. Montreal is the second largest city that speaks French, I believe. Ooh, didn't know that. Okay, let's quickly delve into the history of the place. So, around 25,000 BC, so 27,000 years ago. Hot on the hooves of the juicy caribou and bison, the first humans arrived in Canada, crossing the land bridge that once connected Siberia to North America. Fast forward millennia and millennia, in 1000 AD, Viking Leif Erikson landed in the northernmost tip of the Great Northern Peninsula on the island of Newfoundland, and where they built sod houses, apparently, where they went, sod it, let's build houses. So the remnants are still there if you fancy going to visit. So they were the first Europeans in North America, and they predated Columbus by 500 years, which is cool. Can't wait, but I will be excited. Montreal. Janet's watching. I'll be on soon, Rachel. Yes, as soon as I get over the history bit, Janet, I'll give you a call, okay? Which famous song features Nova Scotia? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Well, Nova Scotia means New Scotland, doesn't it? Just like New Caledonia, which is an island in the Pacific, which is actually a part of France. Okay, so let's get through the history pretty quick, all right? Because we want to have a chat. We want to have a look at the footage. We'll have a jangle with Janet. What I might do is put me footage on, so we can be watching the footage while I'm talking to Janet. That'd be quite fun. Okay, so in 1492. Columbus went over and he found the Bahamas. Yay. And then in 1497, so just 5 years later, a guy called John Cabot, who was actually Italian, I think. It wasn't his real name. He set sail from Britain, on behalf of Britain, and found Newfoundland. He was looking for China, bless him, and he found Newfoundland instead, which is a bit like when Columbus went over, he was looking for India, and he found the West Indies, and he said, this is west of India. And he's like, no, it's not. It's different continents. You're an idiot. Anyway, so... he got there and he found that the waters were full of delicious codfish. So, that seemed like a good idea for them to stay there forever and ever. In 1534, Jacques Cartier sails into what's now Quebec. He searches for gold and precious metals, but only finds chilled rocks. He claims the land for France anyway. This is after St. John's in Newfoundland, about a decade earlier, became North America's first town. Don't forget this. Everyone talks about Jamestown, right? But that wasn't the first town. That was the first British colony. The first town was actually in what's now Canada. It's in St. John's. And it belonged to no nation. This is really interesting. No nation laid claim to it. It served the fishing fleets coming over from Europe. Whichever country they came from, they would sell stuff to them. It was like a trading outpost that wasn't affiliated with any particular nation, which is quite cool. But then, 6 years later, Jacques Cartier founds Quebec. And in the 1580s, something happened. Okay, so basically, I've spoken before about the ridiculousness of the rushes in the past, like gold rushes and saffron rushes and pepper and tea and things like that. One of the most ridiculous rushes ever was the beaver rush. Okay, that sounds very rude, but in the 1580s, people wanted hats, and they wanted hats made out of beaver fur. The only problem was Europe had wiped out its indigenous beaver population, because they'd made so many hats. So they turned to Canada, and basically there was a stampede of people going to Canada to trade fur. I mean, the demand for a fresh supply of beaver pelt was insane for hats, just to make hats. The economic value of these pelts can't be underestimated. Canadian history, the impact of it on Canadian history can't be underestimated. It was the main reason why Europeans went to Canada at that time. It heralded the struggle for dominance between the French and the British, and it caused it was a source of strife and division between indigenous groups for the next 400, 500 years because of a fucking hat. I know, madness. Anyway, 1608, after 4 years of moving around, Samuel de Champlain found his dream home, putting down stakes at Quebec City. Hang on. But, oh yeah, because Quebec had already been, I was getting confused there. Quebec, the area, had been claimed on behalf of the French. It wasn't till good bloody 60 years later, more 70 years later, that Samuel de Champlain found his dream home, and he put down stakes in Quebec City. And France now had its first permanent settlements. Did it have settlements? None of them were permanent, so Quebec was the first one. Then 2 years later, the British took their turn when John Guy built a plantation at a place called Cupids in Newfoundland, and England's first colony it was England's first colony in Canada, and the second in the New World after Jamestown, the second British colony. In 1670, King Charles II created the Hudson Bay Company. This is back in the day when we got things like the East India Company. Well, we also got the Hudson Bay Company, which still exists today. They own department stores. But back in the day, the Hudson Bay Company was granted trade monopoly over all areas whose rivers and streams drained into the Hudson Bay. Now, you've seen the size of the Hudson Bay. It's the second biggest bay in the entire world. So this was a vast territory, which ended up being called Rupert's Land. And it encompassed 40% of what is now Canada. That is some claim for a company. This is not for a country. This is for a company. It included Labrador, Western Quebec, Northwestern Ontario, Manitoba, most of Saskatchewan, and Alberta, and part of the Northwestern Territories. Wow. In 1755, the English deported 14,000 French Acadians from the Bay of Fundy. The Great Expulsion led to a lot of these French-speaking people moving to Louisiana. And that's one of the reasons why Cajun people exist. Cajun people originally trace their roots, some do, not all I guess, but some do, trace their roots to Canada. From 1759, Canada's most famous battle took place in 1759. It was between the French and the English, and it took place on the Plains of Abraham at Quebec City, and it lasted less than an hour. France lost. That's not to say France always lost wars, because it didn't. It won quite a few, especially when Napoleon was running around, until he lost. 1763, the Treaty of France boots France out of Canada after France loses the 7-Year War. And this is really interesting. So 1763, this treaty was signed, and it was all about Guadeloupe, because Guadeloupe in the Caribbean had been taken by the British in the 7-Year War, and the French desperately wanted it back. So the British said, okay, you can have it back in exchange for, I don't know, Canada. And the French said, okay, d'accord. So yeah, that must sting. That must sting for full-blooded French-speaking Canadians to know that their country basically, that their motherland dumped them for an island a fraction of the size in the Caribbean because they saw more value in that. In fact, the great writer Voltaire, this is his quote. I'm going to translate it into English. One pities that poor human race that slits its throat on our continent about a few acres of ice in Canada. Man, wow. That's like the 18th century equivalent of a hitch slap, isn't it? Hudson's Bay Company. Did I get that wrong? Sorry. That says Japan 62. The fur trade fueled exploration west. Just at the same time, Russians spread east into Siberia for furs. Indeed. The First Nation people descended from Mongolia Chinese. In a way, yeah. I mean, they're not descended from Mongolia Chinese because you can't look at it that way. It's like when people were moving around. Don't forget, 27,000 years ago, Neanderthals were still wandering around. There were other species of human. Like, wow. So you can't really look at it like that. It would be more like a proto-human. Well, not a proto-human, but, earlier version of humans. Homo sapiens eventually made their way across into what's now Canada, but it didn't all happen at once. There were many migrations. This is like the migrations out of Africa. There were waves of migrations, sometimes with thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years apart. But in the case of the New World, you had people who came over to Canada. Some people moved north. They like the cold. They like eating the seals. Some people moved south and took residence in America, Mexico. Some people kept on going all the way south so that when Columbus did turn up, there were people living as far south as Patagonia in Chile and in Argentina. So, I mean, it's remarkable that people just moved on. They just said, okay, well, we're done here. Let's go somewhere else. And I think that there is a there is a gene, isn't there, in humans that makes us want to explore new places and set out into the unknown, I guess, for a few of us. Beaver were introduced into Tierra del Fuego, another ecological mistake. Oh, yes, like the bullfrog not the bullfrog, the cane toad. I always get them mixed up because the fucking Simpsons. The cane toad in northern Australia, in East Australia, which is ruining everything. Anyway, let's get back to Canada. 1775, American rebels invaded Canada for the first time. They invaded twice, and this is the first time in 1775. They tried to entice Quebec to join the revolt against the British and the American Revolution, but the locals refused. Possibly because a year earlier, after a lot of agitation between the British and the French, there was an act that allowed, the Quebec Acts, that allowed French Canadians their right to religion, which was really important. They were Catholic, and obviously the British at that time were Protestant, and they'd been suppressing the Catholic religion, so that was to end. Allowed them to hold office, because up to that point the French weren't allowed to hold office, and restored the use of French civil law for French speakers. After the US War of Independence, 50,000 ex-Americans came over the border to live in Canada, along with a lot of slaves. Now, this is something that not a lot of people know this, but the British promised any slave that fought on the side of the British in the War of Independence could have freedom. And at the end of the war, even though the British lost, they said, well, we said that we'll give these people their freedom, so we're going to give them their freedom. And apparently, what I've heard, might not be true, I wasn't there, George Washington stormed out the room. He was very upset. He said, I'm giving up my slaves. Slammed the door. Went off in a big bloody Tammy huff. Anyway, so, but a lot of slaves were moved into Canada, and they took up residence in Nova Scotia, their ancestors having been dragged from the tropics of the equatorial plains of Africa, and then they were dumped in, basically abandoned in Nova Scotia, in Halifax, and some of them went over to London, and that was one of the big pushes for a guy called William Wilberforce, British guy who's famous for prompting the abolition of slavery in the British Empire and Britain. And he and his friends bought what's now Freetown in Sierra Leone and established it as a place where these people, these slaves who had fought on the side of the British, could go and live in Africa, in a place where they would be safe and they wouldn't be enslaved and they wouldn't be attacked by other tribes who had, had beef with them or whatever. So the idea was that we had this colony in Africa called, at the time, Providence of Freedom, and these Canadian living people were taken over there. And when I was in Sierra Leone, a lot of the Sierra Leoneans knew the story, and it seems like this weird connection between Canada, between Halifax and Freetown over in West Africa. Bizarre, but there you go. So true story of the founding of the Province of Freetown, which is now Sierra Leone. Okay, so in 1791 the colony was divided into Upper Canada, which is today's southern Ontario, and Lower Canada, which is now southern Quebec. Lower Canada retained French civil laws, but both provinces were governed by British criminal code and basically British administrators, so that created tension. There's a lot of tension between the French people who live there and the British people who live there forever. It's still going on today. However, it's not as bad as it used to be. In the War of 1812, when the British famously burnt down the White House, that's why it's white, it's to cover the scorch marks, though the war was fought between America and Britain, a lot of it was fought on and over Canadian soil, at the expense of the local pioneers and Indigenous peoples. In fact, the USA invaded Canada twice, in 1775 and also in 1812, and both times to no avail. In 1818, the USA and Britain has the Treaty of 1818, which I mentioned earlier, the upshot of which is Canada's border is defined as the 49th parallel from the Lake of the Woods to the Rocky Mountains. In 1885, prospectors discovered gold on the Fraser River in BC, British Columbia, and thousands of get-rich-quick dreamers moved north and started panning for gold, and most remained poor. 1874, the Charlottesville Conference was held in Charlottesville, funnily enough, Prince Edward Island, for representatives to the colonies to discuss Canadian Confederation. By the way, the delegates, this is really funny, the delegates had to stay on their steamships because all of the hotels and inns in the town were booked up because the circus was in town. Just a little aside there. Anyway, in 1867, 3 years later, it's official. The British North America Act united the colonies under the dominion of Canada, a country called 1867. Its birth date, kind of. It had a few of them, so don't worry about it. The Queen's got 2 birthdays. Why not Canada? So Canada became a card-carrying member of the British Empire, and Queen Victoria celebrated with Canadian bacon for breakfast. In 1885, Canada's first national park opened in Banff, which is a great name for a place. Meanwhile, in Craig Ellachie in British Columbia, which I'm probably saying wrong, sorry, Janet. The last spike is driven into the Canadian Pacific Railway, which crosses the country from one side to the other. In 1893, the Montreal AAA hockey team, or AAA hockey team, I guess, they won the first Stanley Cup, which was donated by one Lord Stanley of Preston, making it the oldest trophy that North American pro sports teams compete for. In 1896, prospectors found more of the gold stuff, this time in the Yukon, and the Klondike Gold Rush is on, with 40,000 hopefuls bringing their pitch and pans to Dawson City. In 1917, Canada introduced the draft to replenish forces fighting for England in World War I, and the French Canadians in particular opposed the call-up, which is a bit weird because the war was being fought in France, mostly, slightly in Belgium, but mostly in France. But whatever. And then in 1919, in the discussions at the Treaty of Versailles, this is very important, Canada, along with a bunch of other countries that were part of the British Empire, so India, New Zealand, I think, and Australia, were allowed to sit in the conference to talk about what was going to happen post-war. So it was given the situation of being an actual great power, being able to decide the future of the world, basically, because that's what it was at the time, I guess. In 1931, the residential school systems peaks with the first Nationals, Inuits, and the Métis children are removed forcibly from their parents, from their communities, and sent to attend schools, which are operated by churches mostly, and they're sent there to assimilate. And they were fucking horrific. And we've just found these mass graves of children who were murdered in these schools. Probably raped to death, actually. So really, really horrible shit went on in these schools. And Janet's going to talk to us a little bit about that in a bit, because this is worth pausing upon, because it is just so wrong on so many levels. Again, parallels with Australia, with the Stolen Generations, where they took Aboriginal children and they gave them to white families to make them white somehow. And there's a great movie called The Rabbit Proof Fence, which I really recommend. Kenneth Branagh in it plays this evil English piece of shit governor who comes up with this rule about, we're going to make all these children go and live with people. And there's this great line in it where he's saying, but we're doing the right thing. You get it. He really believed that he was doing the right thing, in the same way that the Nazis thought they were doing the right thing, in the same way that the hijackers on September the 11th thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were doing the work of fucking God. But Jesus Christ, how deluded you have to be when you're literally murdering children and going, yep, this is what God would want. My God. Anyway, so moving on. 1933 was the height of the Great Depression. 3 out of 10 people unemployed. The areas in Canada along the border, which is where 90% of Canadians live, were really hit by the Dust Bowl. In 1942, Newfoundland became the only bit of North America attacked directly by the Nazis when a U-boat launched a torpedo that strikes inland at Belle Island. In the early 60s, it was a time of change as the Quiet Revolution. It's so Canadian, isn't it? They're so polite. The Quiet Revolution modernizes, secularizes, and liberalizes Quebec. Meanwhile, in 1960, Indigenous people are finally granted citizenship in 1960. Up to that point, they were not citizens of their own country, a country in which they had lived for over 25,000 years. By the way, the Aboriginals of Australia have been there for over 50,000 years. I think they only got citizenship in 1967. I'll have to look that up. Okay, so moving on. 1962, Canada becomes the third nation in space. I didn't even know this till today. After the Soviet Union and the USA, when it launched the Alouette satellite into the stratosphere. Well done, Canada. 1964, the first Tim Hortons opens. In 1967, the great Canadian oil sands plant opens at Fort McMurray in Alberta and starts pumping out the black gold. And this one plant is reputed to hold more oil than all of Saudi Arabia. Wow. In 1980, the first Quebec referendum. Do you want to be independent? Yes, 40%. No, 60%. In 1982, Queen Elizabeth II, II, sorry, and she's not a ship, signs the Canadian the Canadian Act, which gives Canada full sovereignty over their own country. But she retains her right to keep her face on the money and also appoint the Governor General. So, still a little bit of power there. 1992, the government imposed the Atlantic Cod moratorium, which was only supposed to be for a few years. It decimated fishing communities, or Newfoundland and stuff. And because they've been waiting now for 25 years for the cod stocks to recover, and they still haven't recovered from the overfishing. That meant there were no cod left. Same thing happened in British waters, by the way, and there's no cod today in British waters. Pretty much, if we want cod, we've got to go to someone else's waters, which we can't do anymore because of COVID. No, I'm only joking. It's Brexit. Okay, 1998, the Canadian government apologises to Indigenous people for saying attitudes of racial and superior, racist attitudes, and this attitude of superiority led to the suppression of Indigenous culture and values, and it said it would not repeat past mistakes. I hope it doesn't. 1999, none of it, like I said earlier, becomes Canada's newest province and home to 28,000 Inuit people. In 2003, Canada became the world's third largest diamond exporter after Botswana and Russia, which is a bit weird. But yes, sparked a gold rush, a fur rush, a saffron rush, a jade rush, a tea rush, a diamond rush. In 2006, a census showed that 20% of the population, 1 in 5 of the population, were foreign born, making the highest proportion in 75 years. In 2010, Vancouver and Whistler showcased their gorgeous mountains in the Winter Olympics, and Canada wins the gold medal for hockey. Well done, Canada. 2013, Calgary is hit by epic floods. 4 people died, and 100,000 others were forced from their homes in the worst environmental disaster in Canadian history until January this year. 2021, wildfires hit Lytton, destroyed... it wasn't even January. It was only a couple of months ago, wasn't it? So 2021, wildfires, insane wildfires, which we're going to talk about with Janet in a moment, hit British Columbia. And basically, this town that recorded a temperature of over 49 degrees Celsius burned down. It burned down. It's not there anymore. Insane. But this is what happens when you, pollute the planet, put a load of carbon out the ground, put it into the air, and then expect it all to be cushy. It's usually not cushy. It's usually pretty an awful idea. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to screencast from my other screen, and I am going to show you some exclusive footage from when I was in Canada. Now, no one's really seen this before, so I hope it's good. I hope you enjoy it. And at the same time, I'm going to try and get... that's a point. No, it's okay. It should work. I'm going to try and get Janet on the phone, and I'm also going to try and make me little and in the corner of the picture. I'm in my parents' kitchen this week, so I might muck this up because I haven't set the camera up properly. But I'm going to give it a go. So let's go. Let's watch some footage of me in Canada. Let's fade across here. And yes, if you'd like to press play. Ooh, wow. There's... I'm on a train. This is the train from Montreal. There we go. So that's all the seating compartments down there. You can actually get a berth. You can get you can actually sleep in a bed. But I'm not that posh. Here is the dining area, I think. Some free newspapers. lying about. And look up here, this is brilliant. You go upstairs, look. Upstairs. And this is sort of like the viewing area for viewing the world. Look at that. From the deserts of Mexico to the freezing cold pine forests of New Brunswick. Let's go over here. Oh. I'm just setting up my image. I can't believe that just, in a moment. You know, a few days ago I was in the desert. All on buses, well now I'm on the train. It's Monday, the 30th of March 2009. I'm in New Brunswick in Canada. My name's Graham Hughes, and this is The Odyssey. It's Monday the 30th of March 2009. I'm in New Brunswick in
Get your
Canada.
lines right, Graham, you dick.
My name's Graham Hughes. This is The Odyssey.
Wow, that's some awesome footage there from the top of the train. I'm going to be back with you in a moment. Just let me fiddle with this a little bit.
Wow, it's really snowing out there. It's a bit of a late winter this year. I mean, we're nearly into April and it's still snowing. A bit unusual.
Did it?
That's where you get your coffee, although it's closed at the moment, but there's usually coffee in there. And along here, shush that. Right. This is another sort of dining area, I think.
So this is on the train from Montreal.
Sit and do your crossword. It's great, they're going to run on the train. I'm going to go through here. Hang on a sec.
Montreal to...
It's a little bit cold. I don't have a coat or a woolly hat. Well, I don't have a big coat. Okay, and now we're going along here. These are berths, I think. That's the kitchen. Oh, yeah, that's the kitchen.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How you
Hi.
doing? Can you hear me all right?
I'm good. Yeah.
Might have to turn your sound up a little bit. There you go. I hope.
Okay.
I hope people aren't hearing the. Have you got my feed on still or?
No, it's on mute.
Okay. Right. Well, everybody, if you can hear us. This is our family friend Janet. Would you like to introduce yourself, Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet D, not Janet Feeney, but Feeney's my maiden name. And I used to live round the corner from Graham and his mum and dad in Liverpool on Blackmore Drive. And when the boys were little, him and his brother, I used to be the babysitter.
So have you changed my nappy? Is that a true story?
Oh God, yeah, geez, yeah.
So nice to have you on the show. So tell us your story then. So you were a Scouser, and then you went over to Canada. What took you over there?
Yeah, so I used to work for Thomas Cook and spent a lot of time in Spain for them, and then I went to live in Los Angeles, and I was there for a year, and then I went to live in Hawaii. And I was in Hawaii for a year, and I met my husband, Colin, in Hawaii, in an English pub called the Rose and Crown in Honolulu.
That's so bizarre. Rose and Crown in Honolulu.
He was on vacation. He's from Southampton. He moved to Vancouver in 1975, and he was on holiday in Hawaii. And I knew him for 9 days. Then he came back to Vancouver and we corresponded. And that was in like the September, October.
Yeah.
And then I had a job lined up in, I don't know whether you even know this part of it. I had a job lined up in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh.
Oh, what? Don't go there.
I know, but this was the early 80s, and it was a great job. It was on an American medical base, and I was going to do all the travel for the doctors, and I knew going in there that it was going to be really difficult for me because there was no drink, you couldn't wear certain clothes, and back then I was, a real true romantic, one of those well, you know what it was like in the early 80s. And then so I was going to go back to Liverpool for Christmas, and then I was going to go out to Riyadh early in the next year. And so I came to Vancouver, and I was here for a week, and Colin asked me to marry him.
Oh my God, that was quick.
So we got married. Yeah, I know, it was really quick. We were married for a long time. Obviously, we're divorced now, but we were married for over 20 some odd years, and 3 kids. And our eldest son, Michael, is now a Mountie.
He's a Mountie.
First
He's a member
generation
of the
Canadian.
Royal Canadian Mounted Police, isn't he?
Mounted Police. Yeah, and he's doing very well. And we went to his passing out ceremony in Saskatchewan, and we were able to take my mum. We just lost my dad, but my mum came to Canada, and we took her on 2 planes to get to Regina. And
Excuse me?
Excuse
me? What was the name of that place?
the Queen.
Like the Queen.
Yeah.
The Queen's vagina. Okay,
in
yeah.
Latin.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. And so she was very proud to be able to see Mikey, become this Mountie in his uniform. And he finished top of his class, so he got his first choice, and he works in a city right by where he lives.
Yeah.
And he's doing very well. He's had a couple of commendations. It's 2 years now. And he's got a girlfriend, Ashley, who's an ICU nurse. She's had a bit of a bad year with the COVID and all that,
God, I bet she has working on ICUs.
Yeah, so for 14 months we didn't see Ashley and Michael because Michael was out in the community, obviously, and she was on the COVID ward. So we just it was difficult. We didn't see them. And then our second son, Kevin, they've all been swimmers. Kevin still competes. He's at a very high level. He does masters, the world masters. So he's got a few Canadian records. Some of Michael's old swimming records still stand, actually. And just in the Olympics now, their old friend Brent Hayden, who they used to swim with and train with, he come back 37 and swam on in the 100 free and the relay. He won a bronze in Sydney swimming against the torpedo.
Oh, wow.
So, there's some good pedigree there. Yeah. And Kevin knows all these current swimmers because, he's still in that realm, even though he's 33 now, and he still goes to masters competitions. And he's a Red Seal mechanic. We've all got nice Volvos because he works for a Volvo shop. And he's got about 7 cars, our Kevin, and they're always parked outside. It's like your dad's house.
Yeah.
There's
Too
always
many cars.
some car with some car. But he does well because he buys them low and fixes them up and sells them, and he's got a really good reputation. And he's actually buying the place where he works. September 1, he takes over because the guy who's owned it for 25 years is retiring.
Okay.
And he sponsored Kevin's apprenticeship, and he's groomed Kevin over the last 7 years or so. And he's happily, given it up to Kevin because this was this man's baby, for 25 years. So I'm going half of them, so I'm going to own half the business.
All right, okay. So you're becoming you're becoming a Canadian businesswoman now. I should just explain that the footage is all over the place that we're watching. There was footage of me on a train in Canada, but then it looped to the beginning of the video file, and it was showing Dr. Donut in New York. So Dr. Donut is not Canadian. He's very much a New York character. So if you're a bit confused about that, and the footage we're looking at the moment, this is filmed in someone's house. I was just talking about this. It's in Halifax. Once a week, they'll open up someone's house, and they'd decorate it all. This is someone's front living room, and there'll be a band playing in the room. It was just madness. It was insane. And they'd have like, actually not just one band, but there'd have quite a few bands playing, just, jamming some songs. It was completely free. Everyone turned up, had to take the shoes off when you came in, and it was just, you sat on the carpet, crossed your legs, and brought some beers with you and handed them out. And like, after coming from America, where everyone's so paranoid and like everyone's got a gun, and if you look at them funny, they'll shoot you. Going to Canada is such a sea change in attitude. So how have you found it as an outsider coming in to Canada? Have you always been welcomed with, open arms, or has there ever been a bit of a sort of tension because you're not from around these parts? What's it been like?
I don't think I've ever had that from Canadians. They love my accent. They love anything to do with Liverpool. Obviously, thanks to the Beatles and our red football team. And just to, like, the East Coast is so different to the West Coast, and I'm really sad that you never got to the West Coast, Graham, because
I will. I'm not dying. I will. Do you know what would help?
East Coasters
it would help if I could still get an ESTA for America, but I can't get an ESTA now. I've been banned for life. So if I want to go to America, I've got to get a visa.
You know what? I live 20 minutes from the border. I've got no intentions of going down there anymore.
Yeah.
It's just...
I don't blame you. It's bedlam.
It's like living on... It's horrible. It's so horrible. But just to get back to the East Coasters, they've got this warmth about them because it's very Irish influenced, and Scottish, and it's just the welcoming, and there's so much fun. Like, the majority of my working life in Canada, I've been in HR, in healthcare management, and a lot of the East Coast nurses, gosh, you want to work with them because nothing's a problem. They take everything on the chin, but and just another, because you're talking about those people opening the houses up. When 9/11 happened and all those planes were stranded, they all landed in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? I heard about this. That's fabulous.
Yeah, and honestly, those people, Rebecca did a class project on it because it was just so phenomenal.
Well, when I went to Newfoundland, I went to a place called Argentia, which was up the road from a place called Palencia. And I can't remember which one it was, but one of them was it was a military base, and it was made out of asbestos. So they had to demolish the whole thing in the 1960s, like the whole town. So it's nothing's there. They had a cinema, they had a town hall, they had a bowling alley, all of it just destroyed. Because it was made out of poison. And then the little town next to it, where sort of everyone was relocated to a few miles down the road, the people there, they talked in this very strange kind of Irish Canadian accent. It reminded me a little bit of, when you get gypsies from or Romany people, I guess, from Ireland. The way that they speak reminded me a lot of the way that the Newfoundland people spoke, and you're right. They were just so like that. I don't know. They all sound patronising, but there's like a sort of glorious innocence about them. That they weren't all jaded and like just that attitude. They didn't come across as like.
Come on in now, boy. Do you want to be here now? Sit down now. Don't be old. That's what they sound like.
They do say a boot, though. But yeah, just some of the friendliest people you could ever hope to meet. And would you say that's true all over Canada, or would you say the West has got a bit more of an edge to it?
Well, and then you get Toronto, and especially when I worked in the corporate world, they were always the wise men in the East, because Toronto, they say, Toronto. And I don't know, people in Toronto are very kind of, they're dead jealous of us because we've always had nice weather. We've always had nice summers. We hardly get any snow. But back east, you've got 30 foot of snow for like 4 months. But here we live in Lotus land because it's just, well, your mum and dad came for that summer and they'll tell you how nice the weather was. And my mum and dad, we used to have a beautiful home with a pool and all that. And I'll tell you, the kids were in that pool from April to October. Now, a lot of people in England think, oh, what, we live in we're Eskimos and we live in igloos and all that.
You live in igloos, yeah. And if you lick a pole, right, then your tongue will stick to the metal pole, and you'll have to get someone to come and pour a kettle over your tongue to get it off.
No, you have to get your tongue cut off.
What? Oh, can't you just pour boiling water over your tongue? Would that not work?
No,
well,
I don't know.
When I was in Halifax, down the coast from Halifax, there's a town called Liverpool. There's also Peggy's Cove, where they have fantastic lobster. Mm-hmm. Although, while I was eating the lobster, the guy I was having lobster with pointed out to me that there was a terrible, I think it was an Air France plane crash in the 90s, just off the coast. Yeah. And everybody died. And he pointed out the fact that, these lobsters just eat anything, and they live forever. Like, lobsters are immortal. They just keep growing. And I'm like, oh my God, why did you tell me this? But I remember one night I was couch surfing, so I was staying at this guy's house, and it was by a lake, and it was in March, and I woke up and I was hearing this like banging noise or like cracking noise. And it was terrifying. It was like this really loud noise. I was like, what the hell is that? And it didn't happen again. So I sort of drifted off. And then suddenly I woke up again with this big like crack. It sounded like thunder, but not thunder. It sounded like maybe a building falling apart or something. I didn't know what it was. And the next morning I said to the guy, what the hell was that last night? Was it, was there a portal opening to hell or something? He said, no, it's the lake. Because the ice was melting, and when it melts, it cracks and makes this bloody loud noise. And I was like freaking out, like wondering what it was. But that was in March, and the lake ice was still thick enough to ski on at that point.
Yeah. So, and then you've got the people who live on the prairies. So Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, they were all Russian and Ukraine and Polish immigrants. So they're all skis and pierogies and that kind of thing, and very hearty people because of the way they got the land. But it was just there's no mountains, it's just flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in Alberta, they're all cowboys because that's where all the beef is and the oil, and it's like Texas North.
Oh my God, Texas North. A Texan Canadian would be a weird thing, I think. So let's talk a little bit.
They have to, go on. Yeah.
I know you want to talk a little bit about the relationship between the European Canadians and the Indigenous people of Canada, and obviously we've already discussed on this show about the relationship between the Aboriginals in Australia and the European Australians who went over there and basically mucked everything up for them. And this year there's been these horrible stories coming out about these residential schools where...
Yeah, the residential schools. It was called the Indian Residential Settlement Agreement, IRS.
Yeah.
But just a bit of background on the Indigenous people in BC. There's 198 First Nations just in the province of British Columbia.
Wow.
And they've got 30 languages with 60 dialects. That's just in our province.
Wow.
And, they have been trying to get the land, given back to them in some way, shape or form from this government. My husband now, David, he's a chartered surveyor from England, but he worked for the government for a long time, appropriating the land from the Indigenous people to build roads and all that. So they were very well compensated on that side of it as well, once they gave up the land for money. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The original thing where the British and the French came over and just took the land off them, and that's what happened in America as well, and in Australia and anywhere else where other. But now our BC government they always, even if they just have a COVID update or whatever on the news, before they start the TV thing, they always acknowledge what land they're on. So if they're on them, it's Métis, that M-E accent T-I-S word that you couldn't say before. It's Métis Indian. So they'll say Métis, they'll say, I would like to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Squamish people. You know what I mean? So it's getting there, but it's taken so long. I've got a very good friend, Luke, who's a massive LFC supporter. He goes to our LFC Vancouver. He lives across the river from us on a residential place. Kwantlen is his nation, and he's very vocal about this. He's a school teacher as well, and his mum was in the system, and his uncles, and the stories are just horrendous. So there was they reckon there was about 150,000 children between 4 and 16 that were taken away. There was about 139 schools all throughout Canada, and it wasn't just the Catholic Church; it was the other churches as well, but the Catholic Church was the main culprit, if you like. And just since May, just where we are, Kamloops, Cranbrook, these are all little towns in BC, and an island just off Vancouver Island called Pennatuk Island. Yeah. They called that Alcatraz because it was an island. So once the kids went there was no chance they were going to. And if they did go missing, they said, they tried to swim back to the mainland, which is
What was the thinking? Was it they wanted to destroy the First Nation culture, the Indigenous culture? Is that what the plan was? I mean,
they wanted to get rid of all those languages. They wanted to get rid of the languages. They obviously were saying that these people were savages, which these people are like the most cultured people. They understand the earth, the land. Even just I mentioned it to you. I'll mention it to you, the listeners. The way the wildfires are out of control right now up in the interior, they've actually gone to the elders of some of the tribes because they know the land and they've seen wildfires for thousands of years, and they know the path that it would take. So the fire rescue service has got these chiefs and elders to come and help them to stop them from the wildfires. But they're so in tune with nature.
That's similar to Australia. The Aboriginals know how to deal with fire. Yeah. You very rarely hear of an Aboriginal being killed in an Australian bushfire because they get the hell out of there. They don't stand there like a dick with a hose, thinking they're going to stop a 70-mile-an-hour inferno. But what happened this year in Canada is off the charts, isn't it? I mean, it was 4 degrees hotter than it's ever been on record before. Was that right? Yeah. Lytton was the town, and it was 50 degrees. It wasn't 49; it was 50, and it absolutely has burned to the ground. There's nothing. Wow. There's not a house. There's not a business, and this is a town I would say about maybe 10,000 people. I might be wrong, but it looks and seems about that size. I mean, what you do with this? I mean, I'm sitting here now. I've got 4 fans on. We looked into getting air conditioning, which we've never really had to have before. But we've had no rain for going on 8 weeks now. Oh, wow. And as I say, we've always had nice, long, hot summers. But it was 24, 25, maybe 28. It was 48 on our patio 3 weeks ago. You couldn't sit out. You couldn't. Yeah. I've read somewhere that Canada's home to 20% of the entire world's freshwater supply.
Oh, you know what? Well, you look at the lakes. Look at how many lakes.
But if you start running out of water, Jesus Christ, then we're really stuffed. Yeah. You're like the canary in the coal mine.
I know.
But I mean, the way that... so when you first got to Canada, so you got there in the 70s, was it, when you first moved over?
No, the early 80s.
Early 80s. Because I would have been a baby, wouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah.
what was the attitude towards the Indigenous people when you first got there? I mean, did people acknowledge them? Did they just ignore them? What was the sort of vibe? Because I asked this because when I went to Australia, and I lived in Australia pretty much off and on for about 10 years, the way that a lot of the Australians spoke about the Aboriginals really upset me. It really, really upset me because I thought that it was just very, I don't know, in some cases it was just, they just didn't think about Aboriginal people. But in a lot of cases they were downright hostile to these people whose country they had literally invaded. They were there first. So I was kind of like, well, and I often felt like I was the only one in the room who was saying, maybe you should try to, make things better with the Aboriginal communities. And everybody else was just like, oh, they just drink and they snort petrol and they don't want to work. And I always felt like I was a little bit ganged up on when I discussed it. How did you find it in the 1980s before?
That's exactly how they were perceived and dealt with. And you've got to think, Graham, the last residential school closed in 1996.
Jesus
so it was still going on. Yeah. I know. So it's, and the fallout from that
my generation. That would have been kids because I was 17 in 96. Yeah, so that would be kids from my generation.
Yes, exactly. That were just left to their own devices. Now they're your age now.
Yeah.
Unless they had a good family system, which obviously they didn't have that because imagine being your mum and dad and you and Alex taken away. Oh, they probably would have had a big party, but no, seriously, imagine.
No. I don't think so. Yeah.
How are you going to feel as the mother? Like, you're never going to see most of them never seen them anymore because they just didn't come back. So that's why they turned to drink and drugs, and then the kids coming out of the system were sexually abused, emotionally, physically, everything you can imagine. And their only way to cope was to, be like that. Now,
yeah.
I think in the last, I'd say 15, 20 years, you've seen more, more Indigenous people being lawyers and doctors and striving for better conditions on the places where they live, But it's not an easy fix. It's going to take a long time. And every single person I know, and we just want them to, get the retribution they need and the help and because that generation, your generation, did they not have any kids of their own because they were scared about what was going to happen? And it's just a very sad situation. But I think it is going to get better. I'm hoping it's going to get better. Now these
Sorry, go on.
The mass graves where there's no documentation, and the Catholic Church say, well, they closed so long ago that we don't have any records. Come on,
Yeah,
and none of them, not the Methodists, the Catholics, the Protestants, they're not acknowledging any of it, and it's just diabolical.
Have you seen the film Philomena with Steve Coogan and Judi Dench?
Yeah.
That is absolutely heartbreaking because that's the same story, isn't it? It's the Catholic nuns taking away a woman's baby, taking away her child, and then lying to her about what happened to him. And it's a true story. It's based on a true story. And
but it's archaic in Ireland because divorce wasn't legal and abortion wasn't legal only till a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, what were your alternatives? And a lot of these people that got pregnant by priests,
who were supposed to be celibate. Yeah. But when you say things are getting better, I mean, what's the attitude over there like now? Especially with the shock and the horror of finding these mass graves. And I know that there's been statues that have been pulled down in the last few weeks, of British colonial statues and things. Do you think that this is going to be the moment where things change for the Indigenous peoples of Canada, where
do things actually start to get noticeably better, or do you think it's just going to be a slow process where there's going to be still people pushing against it and pushing against the idea that, you know, maybe some reparations should be paid or things need to be put in place to stop this kind of thing from ever happening again?
Well, I can't see it ever happening again because they've got a voice now, and the voice isn't just them. The voice is fellow Canadians who are. Well, I'm an immigrant, you know. I don't agree with anything that's gone on. So, you know, everybody wears orange shirts because that's the thing to say you support moving forward what's happening. You know, they've got some really good leaders, and they just need to get more of those leaders into Parliament, to be MLAs, into civic, you know, roles. And I see that happening because
that is an excellent point. And that's the big difference I found in New Zealand to Australia, because in New Zealand, Maori people were in local government. They were in the government. You saw Maori people. They were there. Whereas I don't know, there might be a couple of Aboriginal MPs in Canberra in Australia, but you don't see them. You don't really hear anything from them. And if you are an Aboriginal and you want to get into politics, there are so many bars to you being able to do that. And you have to get elected. And unless you stand in an area where most people are Aboriginal, people will vote against you because you're Aboriginal. And the racism there is, look, it's not all pervasive. It's not everyone who's a racist, but it's Australia. I found the most shockingly racist country that I've been to, and I've been to America.
More so than South Africa. More so than South Africa.
Yes. And I'll say that because although when I was in South Africa, I met older people who were still bitter and angry about the fact that South African blacks had been granted, I don't know, civil liberties, peace and everything. I'm just showing them the frozen lake out the window here. You know, the frozen lake I was talking about? I'm just showing some footage of it. But in South Africa, I went out on a couple of nights out actually in Pretoria, and it was people from all different ethnicities, young people, and they were all friends and all going out together and all partying and drinking, and they didn't have the same hang-ups as the older generations. Whereas in Australia, the young people, maybe not towards Africans, maybe not towards Chinese or Asians, but certainly towards the Aboriginals, they still hold the same prejudices that their fathers and grandfathers hold. So I didn't see anything getting better for the Aboriginal people of Australia anytime soon. And that was 10 years ago, and I'm still yet to see anything. So I'm hopeful that from this light that's been shed on the tragedy of these residential homes, that residential schools, that something good might come of it.
Just to say, even like there used to be, because you know everything in Canada is British. I mean, the city of Victoria is the capital of BC, and it's very, very English. But then further north, you had these beautiful islands called the Queen Charlotte Islands. Well, they've been given their Haida name back. They're called Haida Gwaii. They're not called the Queen Charlotte Islands anymore. Okay. So in a way, do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's starting to go back to how the coastal Salish people, all the islands, because we've got these beautiful Gulf Islands off the coast of Vancouver, Salt Spring and Pender and all that. But they were all discovered by the Spanish, the San Juan Islands just south of us in Puget Sound and that kind of thing. But and I somebody spoke earlier about where do you think the Canadian Indigenous people came from? Did they come from Mongolia? But it's been shown that they actually came from New Zealand and Hawaii. Because if you look at our coastal Salish people, they look like Hawaiians. They look like Maoris. And they've got all the same fishing knowledge, and that's 10,000 years ago, but that's it's still insane. The same.
Yeah.
Even the art and how they wear their hats and how they do the canoes and all that. I mean, the Indigenous art on this West Coast is phenomenal, and the artists and the poets and
that's something that I wish that Australia would celebrate more. I go on about this in the Opera House because people say, "Oh, it's amazing, it's beautiful." I think it's shit, and they go, "Why?" I said, "Because it was designed by a Danish person." It was designed by a Dane. You know, what's that got to do? What's that got to do with Australia? Why didn't you get an Aboriginal to design it and make it Australian, make it authentically Australian? And so when everyone looked at it, they thought, yeah, that's Australian, rather than the Sydney Opera House was kind of being forced on people as a symbol of Australia. But it's a symbol of white Australia. It's a symbol of European Australia. It's not a symbol of the continent as far as I'm concerned. And as an opera house, it's shit because the walls are made of concrete. So the sound just bounces off the walls. So that's why they don't have any operas at the Opera House in Sydney, because they can't, because the acoustics are crap.
Well, do you remember we had Expo here in '86, and that I believe that's what put Vancouver on the world map, you know, and it was all about transportation, and that's when we built our SkyTrain, you know, the above ground,
the monorail,
transportation,
the monorail,
that goes everywhere.
Monorail, is it a monorail or is it a normal train?
No, it's a normal train, but it's above ground.
Yeah,
but
like
it
the old
goes
overhead.
to all the different. Yeah, but it goes to all the different, you know, the suburbs.
Yeah.
Well, in Expo, all the local Indigenous people, there was a longhouse, and you went in and you know experienced like being in a longhouse, and they used to have this one place where I can't even remember what it was called now, but it was like the smokehouse, you know, where you go in and you're in the smoke, not the smoke, but what they do it in Australia as well, where the sweat lodge.
Sweat lodge. That's where you go and you have visions and stuff, isn't it? You made to sweat.
Yeah, and they did it so well because the guy was a hologram. So you'd have the visions, and this is back in '86. You know what I mean? But it was
brilliant.
Yeah, I know. And he'd tell you stories, you know, because they're such good storytellers, aren't they? And that's how things have been passed down, you know, just from the stories and the language and the. Yeah. So now our University of British Columbia and our Simon Fraser University, the two biggest, and the University of the Fraser Valley, where Michael and I went, they offer Indigenous studies, Indigenous languages. And I think that's another step in the right direction for, you know, young Indigenous people coming up and wanting to learn that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's good. I mean,
and then the fishing, you know, they do have all the rights of the fishing to the salmon, which I think is, you know, some people say, oh, that was their salmon, that was their right. They've been given that back, so they can catch as much salmon as they want. Mind you, there's so much salmon around here. Our Tommy goes mad because I get out a salmon and it's like $6 for a whole sockeye salmon, and he's like, I've just been to Marks and Spencer and paid £20 for that.
So what would you, I mean, let's talk about the quintessential Canada. Let's move away a little bit from sort of the dark side of it. Let's talk about the fun stuff.
Okay.
So I talked a little bit earlier about poutine. Do you have that in Vancouver, or is that just like a Toronto, Montreal thing?
Yeah, no, it's a French-Canadian thing, actually. It's from Quebec. But, I mean, it's all over now. I don't know. It's chips and curd, isn't it? Like French fries and cheese curd, it is.
Yeah, it's French fries with, like, cheese on top. But it's really good. Cheesy chips.
I know. I don't really like it, but you know, we live a very healthy lifestyle. I think that was one of the main reasons I was very grateful for bringing my kids up here, because it's not fried Mars bars and chips and you know.
You know, I was in Glasgow the other day. Home of the fried Mars bars. Liverpool is incredibly healthy in comparison. What about?
But you know, the kids were always outside. They were always in some kind of sport. They all tried every sport until they picked one that, you know, they wanted to do, not that we forced upon them. And thank God they all were really good at swimming. So I had 3 kids all in swimming, 12 years of swim meets, but it was very unusual to have 3 siblings all in the same sport and going to provincials, and it was great. And I think that's the lifestyle that's on par with Australia, where you want to get out in the open air and you want to ride your bike, you want to go to the beach, because we're so spoiled.
Yeah, Australia really pushes sports. It's one thing that I would give Australia and say they do something really remarkable. And whenever you see the gold medal tables or the medal tables at the Olympics, Australia's always up there. And they've only got a population of around 25 million people. It's a small population, but they really push sports.
Well, we've only got 35. We've only got 35 in a country this big.
I thought it was 40. I thought you'd been breeding. 40 now? Have you been breeding? Have you been breeding again, Janice?
Oh, well, I've had 2. Yeah, 3 of them. No, but our guy won the decathlon last night. The guy from Canada won the decathlon.
Oh,
our guy won the 200 metres.
Also, Canada wins really a lot of the Winter Olympic sports, doesn't it? But I always feel like the Winter Olympic sports are a little harsh on like the majority of the countries of the world that don't have snow, which is the majority of countries in the world.
Had the bobsleigh. Jamaica had the bobsleigh.
They did, but you don't get that many like Kenyans competing at the Winter Olympics, do you? So it's all the medals go to Canada and Norway, and a few to Switzerland.
No, we had the Winter Olympics here in 2010, and Whistler was, Whistler's supposed to be the number 1 ski destination in the world, and it is beautiful. I think your mum and dad went there, and it's world class. Do you know what I mean? It's just amazing. And the drive from Vancouver to Whistler, the highway is called the Sea to Sky Highway, and it literally, you start off at sea level, and the road and the drive is just phenomenal.
Fantastic.
But anything here in Western Canada, I did the Rocky Mountaineer a long time ago when our Michael was little, and you get on the train in Vancouver and you travel all through the day. You never travel at night. So we traveled through the day to Kamloops, and we got off and we had a night in Kamloops, and then we got back on the train and we went to Banff and Jasper National Park, which is in Alberta, not in BC. But if anyone gets a chance to go to the Rockies and go on that train, it's amazing.
Well, I've got to say, I mean, Janet, one of my ambitions, obviously after going to every country in the world, I really wanted to go to every state in America. And I was starting up my collection of coffee mugs from every state. And I got about 10 of them, plus Puerto Rico. And and then I've been made to feel a little bit unwelcome in America, but I'm thinking of moving my ambitions northwards and to travel to every province and territory in Canada and make that, a big road trip, preferably in an electric car in the next decade.
Your dad had this, because he loved Robert Frost and the Yukon, and he always had this passion to go to the Yukon, and he thought about it when he was here, but they decided to go to Oregon instead. But you should do that, Graham, because up that way, the Yukon, the Northwest Territories. David's been to a lot of places like that up north because of his job, and it's now there's a lot more Indigenous people the more north you go as well, right?
Yeah. I wish I'd just got up there, because when I was in Panama, obviously it was a case of not being able to leave the island for that long because I had to leave someone in charge and I had a dog and everything. But when I flew back in 2016, it was for my dad's 80th birthday, and I came via Canada. Yeah. And my flight from Canada, from Toronto home, went via Reykjavik, and it was WOW Air, which are now defunct. But the flight was 170 quid. 170 quid.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was no frills. I mean, you didn't get any food or anything. It's like really long flight, no food, nothing to watch on the telly or nothing. Yeah. But it was, 170 quid. I'm not going to argue with that. So, yeah. I got pretty good deal, going back to Ginger next month.
That's great.
I think my ticket was only about 360 quid return. because I booked it ages ago
Oh,
and I didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. And Marcus, the guy I'm going with, who's actually watching this video at the moment, hi Marcus, his flight was about a half more expensive again because it was a bit later. And he's getting on the same plane as me from Paris. So my flight's going from Manchester to Paris. I'm meeting with Marcus, and then we're both flying Paris to Costa Rica to get down to the island from Costa Rica. And his flight was like way more expensive than mine. I'm like, what the hell? I've got an extra flight. Makes no sense. But yeah, I'll have to do that. I'll convince Catherine to come over.
Yeah, please do. You will. You need to come while we still live in this house, because we are thinking of downsizing and maybe buying a place in Mexico. But I don't know yet. That's just all up in the air.
That's a slight,
well, you know how much I go away. You know how much we go away. You know, when I first before I retired, we bought a place on the beach in Washington State, which is just across the border from us, as you know. Yeah. And we had this beach house there for 3 years. It was a great investment and all that. But the Americans that lived there were so... And then once Trump came on the scene, it was just like... And we were so glad we sold it in
do you know what? I had a similar experience with Bocas, because the Americans there were a few of them who just thought Trump was disgusting, but there were too many who thought he was great. And it was just like, seriously, this man's a monster. He's a sex pest. He's a rapist. Would you leave your teenage daughter in a room with this man for an hour? No, you wouldn't. No one would. So why would anyone leave him in charge of a country? So, you know, there was that sort of feeling, and there was a lot of animosity and arguments and things when Trump got in. And that breaks my heart, because there were a lot of people who I really loved and loved hanging out with, and they seemed like really lovely people. But then this horrible man came along, and for whatever reason, they thought he was the man for them. And that was just Americans I know. I mean, it must be so bad for Americans whose families ripped apart by Trump.
Yeah, I know.
By some narcissistic billionaire.
We travel a lot. You know how much we travel a lot. And our last trip was, we went on a 33-day Caribbean cruise, and we went to we were in Guadeloupe when you mentioned Guadeloupe before. You know, that's a terrible place.
Would you swap Canada for Guadeloupe?
No, it was like one of the worst places. We hit almost every single Caribbean island, honestly, and I was just so gobsmacked about how bad it was.
Guadeloupe because there was a strike on at the time. There's a general strike, and I was advised not to go there. So I skipped it and went straight to St. Kitts and Nevis. So,
the amount of people we met on that cruise that were all for Trump, and you know, because that was a year ago last March when COVID was all. We got back on March the 6th, and then March the 7th, the whole world shut down. I know, we were very lucky. But I'm going to Panama and Costa Rica in January on a cruise. I won a cruise because I spend so much in the casino. And
typical bloody Scouser. I won a cruise.
I know. I know.
Ahead, lad.
No, it's a nice one. 11 days.
I'm just showing some footage of Peggy's Cove here in Halifax. So I think there's going to be some footage of the little town of Liverpool coming up, which is a lot nicer in Halifax than it is the Liverpool that exists on the suburb of Sydney. I'm not having a go at Sydney today in particular, but they do have a suburb called Liverpool, which is really grotty.
You know Frankie Connor, who's on Radio Merseyside?
Yeah.
Well, he's my dad's cousin, right? Well, his brother, Jackie, he emigrated to Canada when he was 16 now. So he came from Liverpool, and he married a girl from Liverpool, Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow.
So he's from Liverpool, England. And they live in Edmonton now. Yeah. And he's a blue.
Oh, good on him. Good on him.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
So let me see if I got anything. So, one more thing. You know, Vancouver is Hollywood North, and all the movies get made up here.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've got quite a few people who are in the industry. My friend's son Mark is a set tech. Yeah. Or he's an art whatever. And he's worked on name a movie. He worked on 50 Shades of Grey. He worked on all the Supernatural, all the
chick flicks,
TV series as well. Yeah, I guess so. Right, Deadpool. Jim Carrey was just across the river from me doing Sonic like for 4 weeks in April. I love Jim Carrey. Yeah, in Fort Langley. So.
Is he a Canadian? Is Jim Carrey a Canadian?
Yeah, he's from Ontario. Yeah.
Ah, right. Yeah. Okay.
All the good ones are Ryan Reynolds, Jim Carrey, Mike
Myers. Yeah. And Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. Well,
in fact, a lot of the Saturday Night Live crew from the late 70s were from Canada, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
This is me eating some lobster in the footage here.
Oh, nice.
Is it better than Liverpool on the Mersey, says Chubby? No. Nowhere's better than Liverpool on the Mersey because Liverpool is the greatest city in the world. And I should know. I've been to a few. I'm glad we agree on that, Janice.
I don't feel I've got things to go home for anymore now. I've lost my mum and dad, and there's no family home, and it's different. And,
but would you come over if there was like if I got you a ticket to the derby? Would you come and watch the derby with me? Because that would be fun.
Do you know what? I've said I'm not going to go home anymore.
I know you've said this to me before, but I'm saying if I get you tickets to the derby.
Well, I'm not going to Goodison.
Okay, well, it'll be the Anfield derby then. All right. Is what would happen? Would it be like when they try and take Damien in The Omen into a church and he just starts freaking out? Would that be you in Goodison? Yeah.
Well, you know how passionate my dad was. My dad never set foot in Goodison, not once. And his older brother by 2 years was a Blue. No.
Yeah.
And my dad's brother and him were the closest brothers I've ever known. And Uncle Joe was Blue, and my dad was red. You know how passionate my father was.
Yeah.
He was an agent for the club for 25 years before we had any sponsorship. My dad was he'd sell bloody spot the balls in the pub to help Liverpool Football Club. 25 years. It's ironic how it's changed.
I've been to Anfield twice. I went once to watch Liverpool versus Marseille with Leo because he had the spare ticket, and he called me up and he went, "Do you want to go to the footy?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I didn't know we were playing. He went, "We're not. It's Liverpool." I'm like, "All right then." So I went to see that, and Liverpool won. And the only other time was with you for your parents' anniversary.
So your dad, when your dad first met me, he thought I was this soccer hooligan. I was about 11, and I used to have the two silky scarves. And I went the match when girls never went the match, and you know that. And it was 10 years I never missed a home game at Anfield for 10 consecutive years. And your dad will say that. If my dad was still here, he'd say that as well. And I've been to most away grounds as well. Old First Division grounds, on the specials, like when I was 14 and 15, you'd be the only girl, me and Lisa Cadman or me and Janet Lloyd. Like there was no girls going to football when I went to football. So I'm one of the, and now I'm the godmother of LFC Vancouver.
You're a trailblazer. You're a pioneer.
And just to let your listeners know, I got all my badges. I coached soccer in Canada for 29 years.
Oh, I know, yeah. You were a coach, weren't you?
I was a referee, and all 3 kids became referees. Rebecca was a really good footballer. She played till she was 18.
Yeah.
And I used to coach, Silver A, like very high caliber girls football. And our Canadians beat the Yanks.
Yes.
We're in the gold medal game tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. And did you see Trump put out a message saying that the reason why USA lost was because they're all too woke? Did you see this? He sent out a message.
Are you sure he didn't say they lost because they were all women?
No, because they were too woke. They were too busy being woke, Janet.
Oh, God.
Only they've been more racist and horrible. Anyway, it is coming up to midnight in Liverpool at the moment.
Okay.
What time's it over there? Is it 4 o'clock?
You're going to turn it to 4 o'clock. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to fire up the barbecue.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me and making this episode of Hughes the World a bit different.
Yeah, I hope all your mates enjoyed it, and life in Canada is really good.
Oh, great. And will you be tuning in next month for Ginger Island Live? Because we're going to be live streaming every day from the island. So,
well, I'm going to be in Panama. How long are you going to be there?
6 weeks. I'm not staying there till January, but we will be going back in 2022 if it's a success. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But that'll be great. Well, all right, take care, Janet.
I'm going to the Panama. I'm going. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Oh, brilliant. So that was Janet, who, like I say, used to change my nappies when I was a wee little barn. Right, I'm going to leave you with this footage for a moment while I dick around with my camera. So I will make myself scarce by making my image disappear. There you go. And then I will be back with you in a moment. The footage that you're watching at the moment is on the boat. Oh, actually, that's a point. There's still some footage to watch. So what I'll do is I will come back on. I'm back. Oh no, I'm frozen. What on earth? Oh man, I've messed it up. Just 1 second. I will be back with you momentarily. Oh, come on. The dialogue box keeps opening up and then immediately closing. That's really annoying. Can you please stop doing that? Deactivate. Activate camera. And, I can move again. Yay, I'm not frozen. Okay, so I was going to say, all the footage that you've been watching, that was the train from Montreal to Halifax, and then there was footage of me in Halifax going to gigs, staying out on a frozen lake, going to Peggy's Cove, stuffing some lobster into me gob, and at the moment I'm on a ship. This is an IMSKIP ship. There you go, IMSKIP line, which is a Icelandic shipping company that runs ships between North America, Iceland, and Europe. And this ship was called the Reykjavos. And in fact, I could turn the sound up and you would be able to hear what I'm saying about stuff.
Whatever his name is, Captain Van der Plaats. Could have some food. Yorkshire.
I'm going to skip through me talking. This is on the way to Newfoundland. The town that I was talking about earlier that was destroyed because it was made
this
out
big,
of...
so hopefully still moving.
Stop talking,
you know, if after this kind of thing
the town that I was talking about that got destroyed because it was made out of asbestos. Oh, it started. Okay, that's not right. That's not supposed to happen. Just give me 1 second. I've obviously gone back to the beginning of. I'm saying tape. This is a video file. It's gone to the beginning of the video files that I've been playing today. There you go. Out on the water again. I thought I was going to let this off because I thought that was it for Canada. But I think
San Marino, which is a country.
I'm going to turn my sound off because it's a bit annoying hearing that. Just a bit more to show you when we go into port, I think. There we go. Argentia. There we go. That's the place where we stopped. It must have been a good time that we were there. I went to a bar. Definitely went to a bar.
I wish I could just stay in
Newfoundland.
Got
a taxi to town.
Downtown. All right. Ireland.
In my bag.
On
the water again there.
Leave it on Wednesday. Might not get Wednesday.
There was going to be some footage of me. Oh, there you go. Yeah, no, this is Newfoundland. Let's see again. There's a Luffy over there. There's so many super yachts. Transported from Canada over to
available.
over there.
West.
Here we are loading. This season, April until for 2 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Guys on board. Obviously, a lot of people work on ships.
You're crazy, George.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Crazy George.
Right.
The cook was called Shivas Regal. Spent several months
On
kidnapped by Somali pirates.
this. Yeah.
Some meat here.
Here we go. This is moose.
Oh, no way. Can I taste some?
Yeah, no problem. You can take.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to eat some moose.
We've been
Brilliant.
very excited about trying moose.
It's moose in season
I'm a bit
in,
of an
in
omnivore. I
Canada.
like to try everything once. Go on, give me some moose.
No, just moose will do.
it's moose,
I've already eaten. I'm just being greedy. I just never tasted moose before.
Huh?
So this is moose meat.
Yeah, most meat.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name's Graham Hughes, and I've never eaten moose before.
There you go. Try
Good,
anything
right?
once. Except incest
Yeah.
and dancing. There you go.
But for some reason, I think kangaroos are a bit more gamey.
There you go. Told you it was gaming.
Spectrum of gaminess. Oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just blabbering away. Like, give you the moose.
Ano pangalan lang to? Kasi nabigay sa atin ng mouse.
Okay, I'm just going to let you watch a bit of this.
Tony.
I am
Okay.
going to-
Tony, the guy from Newfoundland here, who's distributed the moose amongst the crew here. Apparently, you can't buy moose in a supermarket. You've got to shoot it yourself, and you can only shoot one a year. So that was quite an exciting experience, you know.
Permit of license.
Getting some moose. What did you think of the moose?
Yeah, moose is the most terrific and most delicious food I tasted in my whole life.
I wouldn't go that far.
It's very good. It's better than chicken, it's better than lamb, it's better than chicken, it's better than lamb, it's better than cow. It's perfect one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I've got to admit that it was really good, but I'm so impressed now because like he only gets to shoot one a year, and he gives. It must be a bloody big moose.
You can preserve it for 2 years. You just only put it in the closed container.
Yeah.
You can put it there and just live with her.
Well, it's so cold here. It's not going to go off, is it?
No, only in their house.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it can last for 2 to 3 years, 5
well.
years.
I'm surprised they don't sell it. If he's saying there's 200,000, 300,000 of them out there, why don't they sell it in supermarkets?
Yeah.
Just write them all out, Graham.
Multiply.
Ten years ago, don't be a
yeah.
tit.
Well,
Anyway, right, I think that'll
If you don't
do.
shoot-
Hello, I'm back. Right, thank you so much for hanging on there. And I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to read too many of the super chats there because obviously I was using my other monitor to show the footage, so I had that on there rather than the comments like I normally do. So if I've missed any, I don't think I have. I'm scrolling through them very fast. And Pineapple Boy has jumped in with another £2 super chat. Let's reschedule the Discord quiz. It's so late with a little weepy face. I'm sorry. Yes, it is a lot later than I intended. I thought we would all be done by 9:30 tonight because I was going to start at 8 o'clock. But situation was I couldn't. So sorry. Right. So I think that wraps it up for Canada. You've seen ice and moose, and we talked about the wildfires and Indigenous peoples and giving you a little bit of history on the place. And I hope we've covered a lot of bases. What it's like to live in Canada and someone's experience of moving from Liverpool to Canada and then living there for 40 years. So you ate Bullwinkle, says G-Pen. Yes, it was actually Bullwinkle. I thought it was Rocky because whereas Bullwinkle's all right, you know, it's kind of cool. Like Rocky's really annoying. So I would eat Rocky like any day of the week. And I thought it was Rocky. Sorry, I got them mixed up. No, I'm joking. Sounds awful. Watching Hardwired and Connection is a bit shaky, but not too bad. Chubai, go to settings, video and voice, change the input device, then change the same settings page. What? I'm trying to get something sorted out. Graham, it's all Graham's fault. Graham, Unicaluda's message here just says, Graham, your Trumpist experience sounds so much like Brexit Britain. Boris, of course, he's almost scarier than Trump because he was so well trained at eating. Indeed. But yes, Saturday Night Live's creator and producer Lorne Michaels is Canadian. That's probably why so many people from Canada ended up on Saturday Night Live in the golden era of Saturday Night Live, the late 80s and the late 70s and the early 80s. Right, so I'm going to head off. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that the technical side of things worked all right tonight and that wasn't too correctly on the phone. I will return at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock tomorrow for the Hughes round. And for those of you who are still there, on Saturday at 10 o'clock, I'll be having my first Ginger Island live discussion with Marcus and you, if you want to watch. and we'll be talking about what we're going to be doing over on Ginger Island. So if you want to join us for that, it's on Saturday at 10 o'clock on this channel. So yes, please do join us. So thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thank you for all my subscribers and all of my patrons and all of my YouTube members and everyone who's dropped in a super chat tonight. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, I will say thanks for watching and fair winds and following seas, traveller.